Well, hello, and welcome to the Midweek Bible Study, or whenever you see it. Isn't that one of the beauties of our Safe Harbor Church? We have over 1,500 videos up now. That's astounding. And by the time you watch this, we will have hit our 5th anniversary. It'll be about on the 5th anniversary. We did a soft opening at the end of October, but then we did a real live Here We Are about the second week of November. So 5 years. It's amazing. So let's get into it. Luke chapter 8, starting at verse 22. I'll be reading out of the NIV, which I usually do because that's what most people have. People ask me all the time what my favorite version is. And for almost all purposes, it would be the New Revised Standard Version, Upgraded Edition. So it's a long name, and it's usually put there as NRSV in caps and then little UE. But I won't be reading out of that because most of you don't use that one. So NIV it is, right? Luke chapter 8, verse 22. One day Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side of the lake." So they got in the boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake so that the boat was being swamped and they were in great danger. All right, great danger. So this isn't just a storm and these guys are little scaredy cats. The boat is in danger of being swamped. Now, if you don't know much about boats, you don't really need to know all that much about it, really. The gunnels, the part that comes up on the side, are only so high above the water. Normally, that's not a problem. But when a wave comes that's higher than the gunnels, it can come into the boat, which means your boat goes down a bit. And then the next wave that comes is going to come right in and you will be swamped. That means it pushes the boat down. The boat doesn't sink all the way to the bottom because they're made out of wood, but it becomes untenable. You can't stay in it. It might flip over and trap you under. So these things are pretty serious. And besides, they would have used sails on their boats. Most likely this is a sailboat. There are some that they used oars on, but almost all of them had sails, and they used the oars merely when the wind didn't work. So you catch the wrong gust in a sail, you can tip over quickly. But this sounds like the waves are hitting them. They're being rocked back and forth. Back in May it was, I was back in Scotland, and I took the ferry from the north of Scotland, Scrabster, up to Orkney, the Orkney Islands. It was the worst boat ride of my life, and I have been in many. I have been in many storms in my life, but this storm was so bad. The furniture was chained down and it was whipping back and forth in the air. And there was great consternation even amongst the crew. Now, we weren't in danger of being sunk. We were in danger of being damaged. So we weren't going to die, but I felt like I wanted to, frankly. So I feel for these guys. I guess I'm trying to cheerlead for the disciples. We often paint them as being slow on the uptick, but please remember, they'd not had 2,000 years of Bible school. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." Now, at first reading, this to me is hilarious because he's peacefully laying there. If you think you're all going to die, why wake him up? It's almost like, well, we're all going to die. We don't want you to miss it. And you're going to die too. Don't want you to miss it. You might say, well, they were trying to wake him to get him to help. Probably not. Yeah, you already had enough people in the boat to do any bailing. That's where you take cups or water or a bucket or your hand to throw water back overboard, trying to get the water out the boat. But he doesn't do that. He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided and all was calm. "Where's your faith?" he asked his disciples. Come on, be fair. They didn't know he could do that. This was really something new. And in the other Gospels, it'll say he said sternly, "Be quiet, be still." The words there really mean shut up and stop. Stop it, shut up. And I brought that up once during a sermon, and this I guess she was preteen, maybe 11 or so. She came up and she said, "You said shut up." And I said, "Yeah, I did." And she said, "My mama says you can't say shut up." It was so hard for me not to go, "Shut up." What? But it is a proper way to address danger, evil, something that comes across. And so here, Luke, for some reason, leaves that phrase out. In fear and amazement, they ask one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." Now, that's a really good clue to answer the question. Jesus said, "Where is your faith?" They're saying, "Who is this?" Didn't they know by now? Well, no, they didn't, because you can say that somebody is the Son of God or the Messiah and not get the ramifications of that. Obviously, one of the great classics of Christian literature is "Your God is Too Small," a book which I think will probably stay in printing for another 100 years. That's a problem for us, understanding the ramifications of who we follow, of being who he is. But again, they really didn't know who he was yet. To them, he was a great rabbi and possibly the Messiah, but they hadn't figured out that he was God. That's going to have to come later. Well, they sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. Let's just have a word about the storm and what happens next. There are a lot of people who think it's just a storm. That's one story. We're moving to the next story. In fact, in my edition of the NIV, it has it separated into a different section and has a different heading over it, the healing of the demon-possessed man. What if they're the same story? I don't know what demons can do and not do. I know a lot of what they can't do. They can't take you without your permission. They can't possess you like you see in horror movie films. They can't read your thoughts. There's nothing in Scripture that indicates they can read what you're thinking. They could probably read what you're doing and work off of that, but not what you're thinking. So could demons have caused the storm? Well, in the Old Testament, it seemed that they really did, and that's what people thought. They didn't really have a very developed demonology until after the Babylonian captivity, when they took a lot of the language of the Babylonians and ideas and such and put that into the problem of suffering, pain, storms, and the like. So demons got the blame for storms. And Baal, or Baal, was a storm god. One of many, but the biggest, most well-known one for most of us would be Baal. And so it's always in the back of my mind was a demon trying to snuff out Jesus before he got to the shore, because he had a guy over there, didn't want to lose him. Just a thought. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in the house, but had lived in the tombs. By the way, the tombs means he's unclean. You can't be around dead bodies and then go around people. There is a period of time you had to do cleansing. The whole Leviticus, Numbers has a bit of it, Deuteronomy has a bit of it, whole thing. So this is a demon-possessed guy who's also unclean, and he's coming up to a rabbi. All of these things break the rules. You're not allowed to approach a rabbi when you're unclean. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." So this isn't really him talking. This is the demon, or demons. For Jesus had commanded the evil spirit to come out of the man. Now this is a good illustration. When the Jews tell stories, they don't necessarily do them in time sequence, in order, like we would. They bounce around. That's why the Gospels have the same stories, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, mainly the same stories, but not in the same place, because they're making a different point. With Matthew, Jesus is the King of the Jews. So and with Luke, it's I'm doing a biography here, but even there, you would have wanted the scene where Jesus commanded the demons to come out of him before the man says this, so that you don't have to explain it. It's just another way to show you Semitic writing is different than Western writing. Well, the scene here is pretty cool. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" Now, in the Semitic times and in many places, even to this day, especially in tribal societies and developing nations, your name is a very powerful thing. And if somebody knows your name, they can bless you or curse you. You therefore have many societies, back then a lot, but many still hanging around, where they give the child a secret name that is known only to the family, and then, of course, to the child later, that is not shared with others lest they gain power over him. So when the angel appears to Samson's mother and says, "You're going to be a mother," and she tells her husband, and he goes, I'm not buying that. So she says, "Well, you go out and talk to the angel." He goes out. The angel appears again, and Samson's dad says, "What is your name?" Angel looks at him and says, "I don't think you can handle that." Most translations of the Bible says, "That is too much for you to bear." But really what it means is, "I think it would blow your little mind." so it doesn't give the name. Well, the demons here try a little bit of smart aleckiness toward Jesus. He goes, "What is your name?" And he says, "We are legion, for we are many here." Legion, because many demons had gone into him. And they begged him repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. "Wait, I don't want to go that far yet." What? What does it mean, legion? Well, a Roman legion was 6,000 men, fully equipped. You had 6,000 men. But you always had people, recruitment issues, somebody's gone, somebody's sick. So you rarely hit the 6,000 mark. And if you hit 6,100, they weren't taking 100 away. So just a lot. So is the name of a single demon legion? No. Scripture says many had gone into him. They found a nice home. Don't know what this fellow had done. Don't know how he had invited this in, but it was in. And now, kind of, well, we got lots of names. A little life hack. Don't mess with Jesus. Don't think you're getting one over on him. Don't think he hasn't thought about a response to whatever you're about to say. That's just stupid. And the demons, well, demons are pretty stupid. Now, they may have a lot more knowledge and power than we do, but the fact is that they know an awful lot about God, and yet they still go up against him knowing they're going to be lost. They're knowing they're going to lose this entire battle. That doesn't seem exceptionally bright to me. I'm not trying to talk insultingly toward them, because the Bible tells us not to do that. But I'm just saying, don't be surprised when they do something and you go, "Why would they? That makes no sense at all." So you go, "Yeah, well, there are a lot of us in here." And it also says that they begged him repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. Well, what is the abyss? Revelation talks about it a couple of times, but it's not entirely clear there if it's talking about a Gehenna or Sheol type place. Doesn't seem to be a Hades type place. Might be what Peter and Jude write about when they talk about that some angels were kept in chains and darkness, because they fell and they were too dangerous to be loosed upon the planet. Therefore, they're in chains in darkness. That sounds like an abyss to me. So that may be it. A little drink of a refreshing beverage here. For some reason I've got a frog in my throat, which I don't eat frogs. Well, Jesus has a reply. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into them. He gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. Well, took care of the pigs. It doesn't kill the demons, but shows a little sense of humor on Jesus' side. Now, I've had people tell me that if Jesus followed the law perfectly, he wouldn't have done this, because he has deprived the swineherd of his flock. First of all, pigs were considered unclean. And while technically you could have pigs on this side of the lake, I can see why Jesus decided to depigify. It is a word, I just wordified it. To depigify the region and get rid of the pigs. When those tending the pigs saw what happened, so it wasn't a rumor, they saw it. They ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Just like the disciples, in the boat. They were afraid because a power greater than us that we do not understand has come among us. Now with the boat, he saved our lives. So we're amazed, but we're glad, even though we're scared of him. Here, it's messed the local economy up. The bad guy is now a good guy, which is confusing, but okay, that's a net positive maybe, but still the pigs are gone. What are we going to sell or eat? They're torn. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes worshiped Jesus and, no, that's not what it says. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got in the boat and left. Now, a couple amazing things there. This guy can do stuff that scares me, and there's no rational explanation for it, so we're afraid of him. And please remember, back then, there were no individual rights. People just did not think in those terms. But instead, there was community peace, and you needed to keep community peace. Your community. Now, your community, you go stomp other communities, but your community had to be at peace. And this man is a disruptor. This man is somebody who has broken the peace of the people because we were used to it. We had a crazy guy in the tombs. We had pigs on the hill. Now we don't have pigs on the hill. Crazy guy is a sane guy wearing clothes and acting good. So that disrupts now it doesn't matter if it's good or not. It disrupted the peace. It frightened them. So they beg him to leave. So he leaves. Jesus doesn't go, well, I never. This is such an insult. Here I came, I did a good thing. Don't you agree? I did a good thing. There's something that I would like you to take away with this here. And that is, if somebody doesn't want you there, go ahead and go. It's all right. In my life before our safe harbor, not after such, but I was part of a religious tribe that had a great fear of being marked as unsound, as not being totally faithful to our interpretation of the Bible. And therefore, whenever I would go speak at a place, it was not uncommon for somebody to write in and goes, I don't think he's a sound preacher. I think that he's too liberal on these things, or he doesn't hold to the ancient gospel, though it, and whether it's true or not, that's what they would say. Most of the time, the churches knew me, discounted the letters, and allowed me just to do my talk and leave. But a couple times, they would call and say, we're really, really sorry. We wish we didn't have to do this, but we're going to have to ask you not to come. I never got angry. I didn't say, oh no, what am I going to do? No, if you don't want me there, I won't be there. That works fine. One time they didn't want me to be there because I had spoken at an event where another man had spoken, although we had not met. We were on different days. Another man had spoken at that event, and that man they didn't like. Therefore, since I'd spoken at the same event, although on another day I never met him, I must also be tarred with that same brush. Yeah. I remember one time a dear friend of mine called me and asked me to speak at a unity meeting among their churches in his region. There were going to be quite a few of the local churches of that tribe gathering. And it was an honor. I said, of course I'll do that. And it wasn't but a few days later, I was in the airport getting ready to hop a plane to go speak somewhere else, when I got a call, and he goes, Patrick, this is the hardest call I've ever made in my life. And I knew immediately what he's going to say. And I want to call him Bob. Bob was not his name. I said, hey, Bob, it's okay. I get it. Evidently, a couple of the churches had said, if they don't want you there, don't be there. But why would you be there? Instead, go be somewhere else. Somebody will want you. It'll be fine. And if you can't find anybody that wants you, get a dog. They love you. All right? Jesus is not insulted. He doesn't turn them into frogs. He doesn't bring the dead zombie pigs back up. So he left. That's all it says. I find that very admirable. And that's why I've tried to adopt that same attitude. Somebody asked me here 2 weeks ago, it'll be about a month and a half ago when you see this, but a couple of weeks ago, they said, now, do you speak mainly at churches now or mainly at law enforcement and hospitals and schools? And I said, it's not churches much anymore because a lot of churches are afraid of, you don't say exactly what we say in the way we say it. That's fine. I've not missed anything out of my life. All those people are still my friends. Let it go. Walk on. It'll be fine. The man from whom the demons had gone out. This is another great thing about Jesus. Listen to this. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, return home and tell how much God has done for you. So the man went away and told all over the town how much Jesus had done for him. Now, why wouldn't you let the guy be a disciple? He wants to be a disciple. What a testimony. This will be a cracker of a testimony, wouldn't it? To say, right, you got a guy that's been in prison 10 years now. He's free and talking to people about how Jesus saved him. That's cool. That's cool. We got a demon-possessed guy that broke chains, cut himself, terrorized whole villages, lived in the tombs. Now he's in his right mind. That's a guest speaker you want to warm up the crowd before Jesus. But Jesus was not interested in drawing numbers, crowds, at all. Jesus was interested in this man's family because he had been unavailable to them for who knows how many years. They had suffered much, probably ridicule. And again, the Semitic way of doing things, if your dad does something, your husband does something, you also share in the blame. It's a family, it's a mark on the family. Very much like among Muslim families that are strict Muslims, and you've heard of honor killings probably. And that's where a daughter, it's almost always a daughter, has decided that she wants to live free of the restraints of Islam. And therefore she listens to secular music, or she goes out with a boy who's not a Muslim. And therefore, to save the honor of the family, the dad or the brothers kill her. It happens very frequently, even in the West. Even in England, Canada, and America, it happens. Look up honor killings, and you won't find a whole bunch of them, but you'll find more than you think you're going to. The reason you don't find a whole bunch of them is papers do not like reporting it, because papers have a narrative, and that's not part of it. So they tend not to put it out there. But it is a real serious problem. And all over Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, it is epidemic. These people have suffered. And Jesus says, your family needs you more than I do. Go be with your family. I had one of our members at a church I served in West Virginia, and I won't give any identifying marks. The man was very high up in his field, and it was a competitive business field. And he was very busy during the week and traveled quite a bit during the week, including evenings. And he came to me one time and he said, Patrick, I just want to ask you if this is okay because this is what I've decided. And I said, okay. And he said, I'm just away from my family so much. I get in sometime on Friday night or maybe even Saturday morning, and I don't have much time with them. So I'm not going to come to Sunday evening services because that church had a Sunday morning and Sunday evening. He says, I'm going to spend my time with my family. And I looked at him and I said, don't you dare come to the church. Spend time with your family. That's your priority. Do that. God said to take care of your family. Go, be blessed. This is a great thing. When we make arbitrary attendance a rule that you have to follow or God will not give you his favor, we've gone well past anything Jesus ever said. And I don't think that's safe territory for any of us. We have another big story here. I'm going to try to get it done in the next 6 minutes or so. Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. I cannot imagine the pain. I just can't. We have a daughter and we have a son. Both of them have been healthy. Any injuries sustained, relatively minor. No major illnesses. We have been so blessed. When I see families that have little children with cancer or the like, it just nearly destroys me. And I try not to let it because it's not about me. It's about them and how we can serve them. But this just gets me. As Jesus was on the way, the crowds almost crushed him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. And that's where we stop. Interesting. Luke leaves out something that other Gospels put in. That she'd spent all she had on doctors, but only got worse. Other Gospels put that in. Luke skips right over that. Wonder why? Well, it's because Luke was a doctor. You're not going to write that. This is another evidence of the humanity involved in the writing of Scripture. And I rejoice in it. I rejoice in the humanity in Scripture, that it is not a legal document dictated by God to stenographers, but a living document written by living people who had opinions and had ideas. So he didn't put it in. I find that pretty cool. Anyway, no one could heal her, so she came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. What's going on? Jesus stopped going, all right, who touched me? Well, I don't know exactly what the crowd was thinking, but they'd been pressing on him. And you can almost feel them rearing back going, no, that wasn't us. And Peter going, hey, it's called a crowd. Crowds happen. They jostle you. If you've ever been to a developing country in particular, you know that there is no concept of personal space. Now, that's a broad brush. Tanzania, for example, they're very formal in how they approach you. And they do not get right into your face. But there are many countries I've been to where you are bumped and jostled. You are kind of knocked aside as you're doing something, and nobody considers it impolite. So you just got to get past it in your head and deal with it. Well, Jesus has been jostled, and he goes, who touched me? Peter goes, it was a crowd. Jesus goes, no, someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Why would you do this, Jesus? This is a woman who has an embarrassing illness. It's a uterine bleeding. This is also a woman who, therefore, is unclean. She is not allowed to come into the city. If she comes into the city and is spotted and recognized, they will pick up rocks and throw at her to drive her out. And her family will suffer as well. Again, that familial guilt, the taint of another's sin. So why are you pointing her out? For that very reason. There's no way she can get in and out without being recognized, harmed at the least. What is Jesus doing? Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. And then Jesus reveals why he did this with one word. And most people don't even notice it. They read right past it. Jesus said, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. This is the only person Jesus calls daughter anytime in the Gospels. Only one recorded. I have a daughter. I'm a fairly nice, placid, peaceful individual. But if you went after my daughter, my personality would change. I'm not a pacifist. You would find that out some way or another. I may not be a good fighter. I might just be getting in the way for 5 seconds, but you would find out, because that's my daughter. That little girl will always be my little girl, even though she is a super well-accomplished grown woman with children of her own and has far exceeded me in almost every way. She's still my little girl. You don't go after her. You don't go after my son either. But you don't go after my daughter. Jesus calls her daughter. And then he adds at the end, go in peace. In the Semitic language, that means not just have a good trip. It means you're under my protection. Peace. Remember, the community needs peace. The community wants peace. And he's saying, that's my peace. She has my peace upon her. Remember, Jesus said to his apostles, my peace I give to you, not peace like the world gives. I give you my peace. Here he gave her his peace, saying, you go in peace. Nobody wants to mess with Jesus. They've been hearing the stories, storms, demons, all the other stuff. Well, we have a few more minutes to go. Sorry that it's a bit long. I'll try to shorten one down the road so that in the life aggregate, I've not taken too much of your time. While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Your daughter is dead, he said. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Oh my goodness, I cannot imagine how hard that hit. That's more like a sledgehammer to the heart than a 2x4 to the head. It just knocks you down. It seems a bit callous too, the way it was said. Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, don't be afraid. Just believe and she'll be healed. Well, that's asking a lot. When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James. We know from the other Gospels that it was full of mourners. When he tried to get in and say, please calm down, quiet. She's not dead. This is temporary. She's merely sleeping. Another way of saying this is not permanent. It's temporary. And they laughed at him. And that was a scornful laugh, an angry laugh. And he drove them all out of the house. Now, gentle Jesus, meek and mild, he could be tough. He drives them all out of the house. He lets Peter, James, and John come in. And the child's father and the mother. Meanwhile, all the people, again, were out there mourning. He says, and again, Luke puts it after the event. You know, she's not dead, but asleep. He says, they laughed at him knowing that she was dead. He leaves out them, shoving them out the door. He took her by the hand and said, my child, get up. Alitha koum in the Aramaic, which that was the language of Jesus' childhood. Well, Jesus spoke it fluently because most of the people in these stories spoke Aramaic. Well, why do they say Talitha koum in most of the translations? Luke doesn't. He says, my child, get up, because he was writing to a Greek and he had a different audience. I think it's to show us that this affected Jesus very deeply. He went back to the language of his childhood and called her my child. What was Jesus on his way to do? To help a man whose daughter was sick and dying. What happened on the way? A woman was sick. Jesus stops, heals her, calls her daughter. Then he arrives at the house. The little girl is dead. He says, my child, get up. Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. I think people are going to notice anyway, don't you? Wait, weren't you dead? You know, that's going to ripple, but he needs to get out of the town. He wasn't about drawing the big crowds and leading a big movement. He was about helping people. Think about that too. Maybe if you're around places they don't want you, you're not where people need you. So you can go and you can be the guy that says, my child or daughter or son, go in peace. I got you. And then I love it. He raises somebody from the dead, for goodness sake, and yet there's no fanfare, no ta-da, no nothing up my sleeves, no presto changeo. No, it is, she's probably hungry. And he eases out the back door. The more I know about Jesus, the more I admire, respect, and love him. I even like him. How about you? Thank you for feeding us, giving us the opportunity to do this, and literally putting food on my table and petrol in my car. Thank you.